Welcome back, everybody. We are heading to our next panel, which is a very interesting panel because we're going to be looking about regulations and policy frameworks that can enhance fintechs catering to women. Policies are a lot of times can be a hindrance, but if applied properly can be enablers as well. So we will be having Rachel Freeman, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Tyme. She will be the moderator, and then we will have Benedicte Nolens, Head of BIS Innovation Lab, Angelina Kwan, Group COO and Chief Risk Officer at Hashkey, and Philippa Martinelli, Advisor Fintech Specialist at the Department of International Trade for UK, joining us together. So I will hand this over to Rachel, and she will take us through the panel.
All right. Well, thank you, Mushir, and thank you. I've been able to participate in some of the sessions today, which has been great, and it was really nice to see the entrepreneurs presenting, from Nigeria, from Singapore, right before the session. So, it's great to see how different entrepreneurs are thinking about the women's market and taking the information that came from Mushir, the study that you had done last fall, to really build out offerings for women. So now we're actually going to take a step back and think, what is the ecosystem that really works to support fintech and women's offerings from fintechs, as well as women employees and just the whole broader ecosystem of women participating in the fintech world. When we looked at this, we thought, the title is called Regulatory and Policy Frameworks to Enhance Fintechs Catering to Women. And we really thought and expanded that to not just regulatory and policy frameworks, but actually the regulators themselves and what they can be doing, and how broader ecosystems can support growing more women customers, women entrepreneurs, women leaders in this area. So I'm really happy because we have on our panel today, we have great women leaders in the crypto space with Benedicte and Angelina. We have now representatives from the government institution with Philippa, from an international financial institution with Benedicte, now at BIS. And I have Tyme, which is a digital bank network, and we have a digital bank with a full commercial license in South Africa and moving into the Philippines. So I had thought that Mushir timed this conference perfectly because the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, issued a report a couple of days ago on the exact title of this panel about the gender gap for women customers from fintechs and why is that happening. So what we thought we'd do is start off with a summary of that report that Benedicte's going to join and to give to us, and then we'll move forward into a discussion.
Good. I will try to do the screen share. Okay. Okay, so can you all see it?
Oh, yay, it worked.
Great. Okay. So first of all, I'm from the BIS Innovation Hub. The Bank for International Settlement is an institution that is a membership-based institution. And the members are 63 global central banks. So you can take a look which central banks they are. But essentially, we do thought leadership across a series of different topics, including this one. And recently, we started the BIS Innovation Hub operation, and you can see myself with my team there. You can see how small my team is. But you can also see that we sit in a rather lavish and beautiful location because we sit with the Hong Kong Central Bank called the HKMA. And so... So that is actually our view there in the background. So we're very, very privileged. So my team, as you can see, is small, but actually very diverse. We have 4 or 5 religions there and 4 or 5 people, actually. And we have, as you can see, a very good age distribution as well, ranging from the 20s all the way to the 50s. And I will not disclose my age in that. I am heading this unit. So again, we have some diversity there, although we do have, as you can see, a few more men than ladies. But as far as I'm concerned, diversity is a broad matter, including gender, including religion, and including age. So now I'm trying to move to the next slide. Okay. So we just issued, and I would say it's not me who issued this. So for full disclosure, this is not my paper. And thank you very much, Rachel, for flagging that we just issued this paper in the BIS. So the key point of this paper is that it used survey data, actually of a survey of Ernst & Young for 28 countries, and found that there is actually a large fintech gender gap. So while 29% of the men in this survey, and this survey covered 27,000 people. So while 29% of the men use fintech products and services, only 21% of the women do. And this gap was present across all the countries in the sample. So that raises a few questions around what that means in practice. First of all, women from all over the world, as you know, remain unbanked and underbanked relative to men. They have lower rates of bank account ownership than men. They're less likely to manage household finances or to participate in stock markets. The key finding, as said in this report, is that gap equally exists in fintech. And if you compare the figure of 29% of men in fintech versus 21% with the bank account ownership, you see that in bank accounts it is 72% of men and 65% of women. So So then the report analyzes the different determinants, like what might be causing this. And it's actually not so easy to determine. So it looks like women report more than men that they worry about their security when dealing with companies online. This could be a driver. They also report being significantly less willing to adopt new financial technology, for example, digital banks. Further, the results suggest that men are more price sensitive, which means that if they see a fintech offer a lower cost product, they're more likely to use it than a woman. And finally, women report being less willing to use fintech, even if it offers better products and products that are better suited to their lifestyle. So all of this is quite mysterious. And it leads to a couple of points in the report that we could open for this panel's discussion. So first of all, while it could be that men are more likely to make financial decisions among couples, this report actually finds that the gender gap is also present among respondents who live alone. The results suggest that arguments that try to tie the gap to traditional gender roles within a household actually fall short. In addition to that, female respondents are less likely to live alone, work, or have a degree. They're more likely to agree that they are unsure about how to best plan their future. Now, some of the explanation might lie in this, but I'll leave it to our panel members to think around this. And then furthermore, as per prior research, also cited in this research, these two authors, so Croson and Gnisi, provide evidence that women are more risk-averse than men, which could explain why women are less willing to adopt new financial technology, irrespective of whether it's offered by new or established players. If so, as fintech products become more standardized and regulated and more widely adopted, the gap could close over time. So these are thoughts within the report. Now, I want to add my own less scientific take to this as food for thought, again, for this panel to discuss. I would start with always looking at ourselves. First question, do we have enough time? I think as women, we are managing many, many things. We're managing a household, and if we have a job, we're managing a job. It leaves actually quite few time to manage financial matters. And as for myself, I've learned that only as I aged and as I got my household under control, i.e. as my children started growing up, I found that I had enough time one institution. And I tend to take it that as long as that institution offers me those services, I actually continue transacting through that institution. Again, I might not be a representative sample, but I question whether this is part as well of what we might want to think about. But the most important probably of these three is, do we need more role modeling? Do we need more adoption of fintech by women? And then those women role modeling that they found that fintech and that fintech is particularly useful to address their user needs. And personally, I think role modeling is something we really need in women leadership across the board. We will touch on more topics along those lines, but I think it also applies to fintech. And I think it takes time. And I would say that with fintech as a term only being a 5-year-old term in terms of it being defined, I think that this might in part explain that we need more time. But I see certainly a lot of opportunity, including in the woman who just presented. I'm highly encouraged by this. And as said, as for myself, I am actually the leader to this team. So I'm trying to put into practice woman leadership in this space.
Well, thank you, Benedicte. And when I read the study, I also came up with some of the ideas that you had. And one of the things that I came up with was this idea that women are that there's a constant conversation. Women are more risk adverse, and they're not willing to take the risk of moving to fintechs or more unregulated potentially products, and that's what's causing that. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but it would be great to hear from Angelina and Philippa. What do you think is going on, and what is your view on this idea that women are not willing to take the risks of engaging with these new types of fintech products? So, Angelina, do you want to start on this?
Sure. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Benedicte. That was great as a intro in. I think there's a couple of factors that are actually out there, and we can discuss this. First of all, I recently spoke on a panel where a research professor presented research on, do women get worse financial advice than men? So it was a very provocative topic, and many of the same issues came up as what was covered in Benedicte's, the BIS report, where women may not be the breadwinner, and therefore financial intermediaries may not want to spend time with the person that's not making the decisions. Sometimes women don't ask more questions, and that could be a societal issue. And there were a number of questions and topics that were actually brought up with that women don't necessarily get the best research. And what we actually came out of that panel was to say that, look, women themselves need to take their financial future in their hands. And if they don't understand the products that they're actually going into, then they have to learn. And this is something that needs to change in terms of how women deal with their own personal investments as well as their families as necessary. As the vice chair of the Women's Foundation, we actually commissioned research on girls moving into tech, because we found statistically that younger girls actually do really, really well in math and sciences. But what happened was, as they got older, when they got to like 12 or 13 years old, it was societal and family issues that actually talked them out of moving into STEM subjects. oh, you're going to have a difficult life if you go into tech, and you should have an easier life of being a child bearer and go and do something like English. And we found that there were a lot of these horrible statistics that were actually coming up. And one of the reasons why, for example, our non-for-profit group, the Women's Foundation, goes out now and runs programs called Girls Go Tech, is to encourage young women and girls to start learning about tech and staying in the workforce so that you get more women in tech that can actually change the balance of products that would be more focused towards women, that women would have a say in terms of being a part of the table. And I mean, I hate to say this, but in Hong Kong, now that I know Rachel, it's like the three of us, Rachel, Benedicte, and I, are some of the few senior women in tech. And it's actually sort of scary that more women are not moving into this area. And this is something that we as role models need to also do. So these are just some things that I would say that are societal. And women need to be very, very aware of this. And if they have kids, encourage your children, encourage your boys and girls to go into tech. There shouldn't be societal issues that keep you from going into tech. And again, women do need to help women themselves in terms of encouraging more women into the fintech industry. And women should produce products that would help other women in terms of financial services. So just some thoughts. Thank you.
So, I mean, I think that there's a clear message in that this is not a short-term fix, right? That what we're hearing is that you need to start thinking about, from young age, we need to build this out, and then we also need to work on it every day. Yes, I have. Yes. So, and I think that that's really important. So, Philippa, I mean, you were in Hong Kong, but now you're in the UK, and I think that you may have a differing view. So, it would be interesting to hear your view on this.
So thank you, Rachel. And I would agree with the point around education. I think that's really essential, not only at this early age, but also in terms of empowering women to feel like they can make those decisions about their financial future. And Benedicte, you made the point about women perhaps being unsure about how to plan for the future. I think that pervades into their usage and comfortableness with financial services. I think there's also this kind of bigger systemic piece that Angelina was touching upon, which is around equality from a legal standpoint and from a societal standpoint in countries around the world, right? So there was a recent study done by the UK government and looked at, there's 190 plus countries in the world, right? And there are only 8 where it was considered that there was parity at a legal level in terms of men's and women's rights. So we've come a long way in a couple of thousand years, but there's still a long way for us to go. And so that's why there needs to be action at a community level, at a political level, at a regulatory level, in order to try and address some of that imbalance, right? And we need to start with frameworks and education in order to facilitate that.
Yeah, so I was with IFC before I joined Tyme, and
totally agree.
IFC has many women there, but as Angelina said, it is very different when you're not in an international financial institution that has specific rules about this, and it was shocking. So I've kind of changed my views on this since leaving the World Bank. So what do you guys feel about quotas? So for example, should the regulators put in quotas to have women on boards? So, Angelina.
I had lunch with somebody who was quite influential. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I had lunch with somebody that's quite influential on this type of topic. And she said, it's pretty embarrassing in Hong Kong, and we're never going to get anywhere unless we move into quotas. And for this woman to say this, it is revolutionary, because she is a part of the establishment in Hong Kong. And for her to actually say this verbally and to take this forward, she is quite committed to doing so. She's just trying to figure out how to do it. Benedicte is somebody you and I both know very well. And I think she has the power to do this. It's just convincing people in Hong Kong and the vested interest that having just one woman on a board or no women on a board just doesn't help in terms of diversity and for decision making. And I always say that if it were Lehman Brothers and Sisters, we'd have a very different outcome. So I totally agree with what Philippa is saying. We have to put in a framework, and now the time is coming to say that quotas are necessary, because it's not moving. We've pushed, the 30% Club has been pushing, various groups around the world have been pushing to get more women on boards and women in leadership positions. It's just not moving fast enough. So agree with both what Rachel, Benedicte, and Philippa have been saying. And that's the only way.
All right, Benedicte, what is your view on quotas?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of quotas, and I've been a big fan for a long time, way before, let's say, a lot of other people were a fan of it. So my fanship of this dates back to around 2012. And so it is the time when the Hong Kong Stock Exchange was doing its early consultations on ESG, so environmental, social, and governance. And under governance sits diversity on boards. And the question was, should we make quotas mandatory or not? And you know, in the Nordics, these are mandatory already, and the results were actually at the time already visible as positive. So it isn't just now. Now we're like 8 years on from that, or 9 years on from that. But the results were quite clear already, and you could already look at the early results as evidence that this was the way to go. Yet in 2012, when I raised this, I was told that, oh no, we cannot do this, because if you impose quotas, you will get stupid women on boards. And I was really surprised when someone said that to me. First of all, because I am a woman, and it hurts a little bit to think about the distinction between man and woman being based on stupid and smart. But aside from that, let's say it did perplex me for a while. So on my way home, I then thought, well, look, if quotas lead to stupid women on boards, then for sure there must be an equal probability mathematically of that happening for all genders. So anyway, I never took the debate up again with the individual, because I had the feeling that it was a closed door and that it was just not worth me going on to a mathematical probability-based debate of having stupid any gender anywhere. But anyway, look, we're 8 years on. We still don't have quotas. And the Nordics have steamed on with spectacular figures of gender equality, in part as a result of this. So to me, it's not a question. And I think I would hope that we move on from debating this, including sometimes I hear the unqualified woman question, right? Even being cited by women, and it really doesn't help women when you keep saying this, that it will lead to unqualified women on boards. But aside from that, and I think since we're at this event where we had these fantastic women present on their fintech startups, it's great to have women on boards, absolutely fantastic. But I think it's even greater to have women entrepreneurs. And so I was very pleased to see these women entrepreneurs. And Rachel, you're one of them. Yep. So Rachel, I think it's up to you to talk a little bit about how Tyme became so successful in South Africa, because I spoke with you before and I found this a very, very actually simple story. And the simple story is to think about your customer, and in specific about your female customer, and to target your customer very specifically. So maybe, Rachel, you can fill us in a little bit so that maybe the other ladies can learn as well about how to target their product for women.
All right. So thank you. It's so nice of you, Benedicte, to talk about Tyme that way. So I'll talk about this and then I'll go back to Philippa. So we're a digital bank, and we believe that as compared to maybe the European digital banks that people are aware of, that you need to have high tech and high touch. So we have our digital bank. We're completely digital on the back end. But in the front end, we actually believe, first of all, that people like people, and that you need to walk with people on their digital journey. So this means that we have installed kiosks, and we onboard for a full bank account in under 3 minutes in our kiosk in grocery stores. So you go into the grocery store, you can open an account, and then automatically you can go to the cash register and do cash in, cash out. So this means it's very easy to use, and it kind of embeds into our customers' lives. We have 52% women. But what is even more important is we have ambassadors at the kiosk, and after you open the account, they explain to you how to use the account, how to download the app, how to do all the functions of the account, so that you get a lot of customer education, and our ambassadors have to come from the community in which they live. So 85 of our customers, we're about to hit 3 million, have come through the kiosk. 70% of our ambassadors are women. And we have a 69%, since everyone talked about net promoter scores earlier in this today, including Inez from Financial Alliance for Women, that we have 69% for low-income women for net promoter score. So we're really hitting our target market. Because of early engagements that we had, as a team, but also with the Financial Alliance for Women, we have been very active about gender disaggregating data. And that's equally important. So if we think that there are certain things, and I know that the report that Mashir did talked a lot about this, and we really listened to that report. We had done this before, and we found that very interesting findings from our data, which showed that women were actually using our accounts in very smart ways, where the things that we did, which were economic and time consuming, which is how we wanted people to use the accounts, all the women were actually using the account that way, while men were using the accounts in kind of costly, non-time consuming ways, like going to other banks' ATMs. So we really feel like we listened to the customers and thought about how to do this, and then our customers were responding. So I think that's what's really important. And if you go back to this conversation first on the board, so I actually think that it's not just one woman on a board. You have to have 2 women. And there's been a lot of studies that show that when you have 2 women, you have real impact, because one woman is still is there and is maybe a lonely experience. But if you have 2 women on the board, you can really make change. So then the next piece of this, and why it's really important both for regulated institutions, is because they're the funders. So the first group is getting the funders. And then I think it's quite important to trickle this down to first kind of funders who are on and are listed, and that's how the regulators, but then the next level with venture capital and private equity and those type of funders. If we can have women on their boards and more women there, they're going to start thinking about funding women. Because if you listen to all of our startups today, a lot of them are looking for money. And again, we need to have more women in the funding group. So Philippa, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yep.
For first quotas, and 2, I really like the idea of the education in STEM, and I hope to be doing that on a daily basis in my own household. But what is your view? How can we change the dial here?
Absolutely. And the first thing I will actually say is your story, Rachel, is a really important one for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur. Understanding your business and understanding your customers and using data to build your business is just essential. So thank you for sharing that. I think on the quota side, it's an important tool that, as Benedicte mentioned, a number of different markets are using in different ways. I think you need that aligned with things like disclosure requirements to actually make this an issue at a senior level across an organization. And there's this point around sort of boards plus executive. And in the UK, we've made a lot of progress in the FTSE on board representation, but not on chairperson representation and not on executive representation within businesses. So I think there's more layers than just the board level to this. I like your point about education. I think that it's not just the STEM, it's, as you say, investors, and making sure that investors are aware, and Mashir's report mentions this, that they have the right data to justify decisions that are made on women-founded businesses, on women-focused businesses, and to realize that that's a really important place to be putting their attention. But also, in the UK, we have almost 50% of investment teams have no women at all at any level. And you really need to have a mixture of perspectives in order to be appreciating potential investments in the right way, in order to be investing in a diverse range of businesses. So that's definitely something that that we need to address. I think we've spoken about also the network piece and representation, and having those role models for you, whatever stage of your career you're at. If you're a young person deciding whether to go into STEM, whether you're beginning your career and deciding whether financial services or technology or an associated sector is right for you. And then as you kind of go up the ladder, or as you found a business, you need to have the right role models there. And I think that network effect is really important. And then we've spoken about sort of quotas and affirmative action. I think that those 4 pillars together are what actually make progress.
So what do you think are some things, like in terms of on a practical level?
If I could just jump in.
Angelina, jump in.
No, I was going to talk about some of the practical stuff, which, sorry, Philippa, did you want to start first? And I was going to bring up some points afterwards. Did you want to bring up some practical
No, I'll jump back in.
Well, okay. I was going to say, I was going to say that for myself and Rachel and Benedicte, we all went into STEM. Maybe we didn't know everything, and but we made a go at it. And that's something for women. I think they tend to, gee, am I good enough for this? Or the imposter syndrome. And I really applaud all of the founders that were speaking. I came early to listen in, that you are out there doing this and taking a chance and putting your all into all the pitches. And it's the same thing I would encourage for those young women and girls that are thinking about a career to really think about moving into fintech. For me, I found digital assets fascinating, and I really, really like what I'm doing. Is it difficult? Yes. But is it interesting? Yes, it's seriously interesting. And if you are willing to embrace either working with the Tyme or in Benedicte's earlier career, she was at Circle, and just taking a stab out from just doing what you normally do to try something new. Women need to be more proactive, and don't worry if you can't do it, because guess what? The guys are not necessarily much better either, as Benedicte said. So take your life into your hands and do something practically, and try moving into the fintech area and learning about it first. That's what I would give some practical advice. And then women who are in that field, we're out here to role model for you. We're out here to speak. We're out here to try to get you guys to move into the field and try it. Hey, I failed at one point in terms of maybe I went into an organization I shouldn't have, but you know what? I got up again and did it again. So you guys can do it too. That's my practical advice.
Yeah. So Rachel, maybe to reflect on what you said, I think that, yeah. So I think the woman funding point you made is extremely important, because let's say the board 30%, right, is often focused on publicly listed companies. But you're right, if you want women entrepreneurs, you need these women entrepreneurs funded. And that needs to happen way before it's a public company. It will never become a public company unless they're funded. So I totally agree with the point you made about thinking about the early stage venture capital funding. So I think it's something I want to put more thought in, and even maybe connect with some venture capital associations. We do have them in Hong Kong, and in fact there are women, but it is a point that I didn't quite think as much about until I listened to you. And Angelina, on the imposter syndrome, unfortunately, I think we all suffer from it. Like we sometimes, even for me, I mean, to share with this audience, I can lose suddenly confidence, and it has to do with the fact that you may get that imposter syndrome thing, right? And it's just like, I think as women, we are just going to have to accept this, because I have tried to navel gaze, and I think it has to do with early education. I think there's times when, as a girl, you were suppressed and you were told that you're not as good. In my case, to be honest, for everybody's information, I was told I actually better just work in the household. And that sounds odd coming from a developed market, but it is the truth. I can give anybody more detail if you want about it, but it was very, very clear. And I would say another point, though, is your parents. If my parents actually, ignored that report, that made people conclude I should better work just in the household, right? But had I not had parents who were focused on this, then or who ignored whatever was said there, then I wouldn't be here today. So I think the imposter syndrome, as said, comes from way down at some point in our life. I think the girls might have been more suppressed at stages in their life than the boys. And I think we're just going to have to overcome these insecurities as and when they pop up in our lives. And then lastly, as you mentioned on STEM, Angelina, I found that also a great point. I've seen this, that parents will think STEM is not a good education for girls because their life will be too hard. I don't buy that. I think the future is about STEM for men and women. And in that sense, our life will be equally easy or equally hard, or you could even say it will be a lot harder if we haven't done STEM. So these are my thoughts on some of the things you all mentioned.
I might just add.
Yes, Philippa, because then Mashir wants us to wrap up. So, but I want to hear from you.
Something that I thought might be interesting, actually, Benedicte, for you, but also for those listening, is an initiative launched by a non-profit organization called Diversity VC last year, which is a diversity standard. I mean, it goes much broader than just diversity lens in their investing process, and really embedding that in their mindset. So it comes at sort of tiered levels. So having a chief diversity officer, for example, is and a diverse strategy is part of that sort of first tier of certification. And you can kind of go up the ranks from there. But I think it's really important in terms of, you kind of need to call people out in the industry to demonstrate what is right behavior and what's not, because a lot of businesses build with kind of gender neutrality in mind, and that's not a problem, but we should consider the kind of broader impact and the needs to be inclusive and the need to be diverse in the way that we operate.
I agree, because I don't believe gender neutrality is built-in bias. Women throughout this industry. And also, I just want to leave with the excitement of kind of what's happening in digital assets and crypto and the things that Angelina done and Benedicte has done, which are really exciting, and bringing more women into that market is crucial. There was a study, or there was an article in the New York Times that came out like 4 or 5 years ago that said if you're good at playing like Catan, Bitcoin traders, when they're not trading Bitcoin, play Catan, which is a great game. So my last thing I'm saying is, if you want to bring more STEM in and you have girls, buy Catan, because it's a great game for get them thinking about trading. And I have a little Bitcoin trader on my hands because of Catan. So with this, thank you so much, Mushir. I'm very sorry, but I really loved the panel, and I really liked getting to know the women on this, which was a unique experience. So I'm very sorry that we didn't end earlier for you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing all of you. And Philippa, come back to Hong Kong when you can and are allowed to.
Thank you, everybody. You too, all of you have had such deep insights.
Definitely, Philippa.
I'm sorry I had to cut this off.
Thank you for being a great host, Rachel.
Thanks, Angelina. Thank you, Philippa, and thank you, Benny and Rachel again.
Thank you.
Very quickly, give us 2 minutes. Thank you.